Hello, everyone. A very good evening to all the respected board members. A very warm welcome to all of you. It's finally a pleasure to finally meet and interact with all of you today. I welcome you all for today's special and interactive sessions. Uh, I, Sunana Kundra, and Vaishnavi Tiwari, my co-host, will be the host for today's roundtable interview session. Uh, so today, for our viewers, our guests are the board members of the Women in Nuclear India, or as we all call Win India organization. A quick recap for the viewers. That Win India is an independent organization that has been recently launched. It is an organization that aims to acknowledge and encourage the contribution of the women fraternity who have helped in shaping up the uh, structure of Indian nuclear power program. It has been formally announced and launched this year on 15th August by Dr. R.B. Grover, who is a member of Indian Atomic Energy Commission. So, welcome everybody.
Choosing the Independence Day for launching such an organization itself makes a very bold statement about the organization and its worth. And we've seen that over the years, women have contributed so much to the Indian nuclear power program. But sadly, these accomplishments were not really highlighted or, promoted or applauded as much as they should have been. So we all really hope that this organization will help to promote this women empowerment, especially in the nuclear sector. And today we are going to introduce you to the people, the faces behind this organization. All these people, they come from the diverse domains of nuclear engineering in India, and I would like to introduce you to them one by one. So first off, we have Dr. Mary Mohan Kumar, who is a former senior scientist at IGCAR in the division of radiation biology. Then we have Dr. Uma Shankari Kannan, who is the head of reactor physics design division at Bhabha Atomic Research Center in Mumbai. We have with us Dr. Manpreet Sethi, who is a distinguished fellow in the field of nuclear security and is currently placed at Center for Air Power Studies in New Delhi. We have Dr. Alpna Goyal, who is the director of Amity Institute for Nuclear Science and Technology in Noida. We have Mrs. Manju Gupta, who is a former president and managing director of Arriva India. Then we have with us Mrs. Archana Yadav, who is an assistant professor in nuclear science and technology at the Amity University, Noida campus. We have with us Mrs. Kritika Kaur, who is the technical manager and the radiological safety officer for Nuvia India. Also, there is Dr. Jyoti Gupta, who is a former scientist at Bhabha Atomic Research Center, Mumbai, and she's currently placed in London. Then we have Dr. Akanksha Saxena, who is a nuclear engineer working in the ITER project in France, and she is a part of the diagnostics division at ITER Kadarash. And last but not the least, we have Dr. Niten Singh, who is the president of the Indian Youth Nuclear Society. I welcome all of you on board and thank you so much for taking out the time from your busy lives to interact with us.
I would like to apprise all of you before we proceed further. I would like to apprise all of you about the reason why we are conducting this interactive session today. So once on 15th August, when India was formally launched, so we were like bombarded with a lot of questions from people like, what is this organization? We want to know more about what's going to happen, what are the activities, what are the objectives, what they are going to do. So such kind of questions, we were like throbbed with such kind of questions. So we thought like, okay, why not directly ask the people, the faces behind this organization and bring it to the people directly. So that's why we all gathered here today, and to address these issues, to address these questions from the masses that we had today. So, starting with our program today, first of all, a heartfelt congratulations to all the board members for starting up this organization. So, as we start any organization or any institution, so there's always a kind of motive, or like, the thought process behind it. So this leads me to a very fundamental question that I would like to ask Dr. Mary Mohan Kumar. That, ma'am, that if we go back a little back in time, I believe that somewhere around in 2012, this WIN initiative, the Women in Nuclear initiative, was started. And I think probably from that time, you had been the sole representative from India at the WIN Global platform. But right now, like, since it has been, like, formally launched as an organization, a group of people, like-minded people that have come across. So I would like you to elaborate on the mission and the vision, the thought process behind, uh, forming up this WIN India, ma'am.
Thank you, Sunaina. Um, shall I start with a small story? You can hear me,
Sure.
right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say, as children, we would have loved to, chase butterflies, dragonflies. I don't know how many of you have engaged in that activity. I have. Well, those days we had a garden and we could afford to do. These days, of course, our children live in concrete jungles. It's a different story. So there is a story about a child which went in search of a butterfly. Butterflies are so attractive, so went to catch the butterfly, not to hurt it, but to keep it close by, and then like we put birds in the cages. Although I'm not for it. So a child went in search of this butterfly, then found the butterfly sitting on a flower, went close by to pick it, and immediately it flew away. Then he went to another flower. Again, the child tried doing that in vain. And then the third and the fourth and the fifth, and by the time the child was really frustrated, tired, run down, and decided to quit that um, activity and go to find some other activity to play with. And then totally forgot about this chasing process and was busy with some other activity. And then you know what happened? Suddenly, the butterfly came and rested on that child's shoulder. So how do you think that child would have felt? This is precisely how I felt. See, you said 2012. No, much before that. When I joined the WIN Global, it was 2005. And then I was immediately appointed, requested by the WIN president to be the representative for India. But even before that, there were some very, very eminent members of this WIN Global. Okay, some of them are no more. Like, for instance, Dr. Dean Shah, oncologist. There were many more, at least about 15, 20, even before I joined the organization. But then ever since 2005, I thought I would do something to create a chapter for WIN. That's the way it was, but without any success. So after 15 years, this has become a dream come true, as I've been telling this. So now I'm very happy that the board members and everybody around are really eminent, and we have a diverse group, people with expertise in science, technology, nuclear issues, security. So what more you need for a launch of this type? So here, you asked me about the mission and the vision. It is not going to be very different from the vision and the mission of the WIN Global. I also request you, all of you, if you haven't gone through the WIN Global site, they are a very big organization. There are so many chapters all around the globe, almost all the country. And we are lagging behind with so many nuclear scientists in the country. Of course, you know the various difficulties there when we try to project ourselves in the international world. Whatever happened, now finally we have made a breakthrough. So my own experience was as I was in the radiological safety division, and way back in the late 80s itself, they started this radiation public awareness program. You know, Kalpakkam is a place where we have a reactor, it's a comprehensive thing. We have a fast breeder reactor coming out. We have the reprocessing facility and so on and so forth. And this was not without criticism from the outside world. There were quite a lot of anti-nuclear lobbyists, okay, always coming and asking us questions. And then came the close by the Kodamkulam reactor. So much of opposition, everything was there. So the then division head suggested that we should have an awareness program, not to keep things so secretive. People have a lot of different wrong opinions about nuclear energy and nuclear technology in general. So that's how we started the radiation public awareness program. And I was one of the group. We were about 10 people to begin with. All that we used to do is to call the people around us, whatever be their occupation, policemen, teachers, students, nurses, no, we, because these are the people who get wrong information. And let me tell you, even when I used to go to so many colleges, even professors had very little idea about what is this nuclear power, what it's going to do. More so, all of them were scared about the health effects. The first question will ask, are you not scared to go live there? Are you not going to be exposed to radiation? So because all that they know about nuclear energy is an atomic bomb. That's the one that is being portrayed in the media. So all along it's bombing, it is disaster, it is killing, long-term effects, cancer. This is all that is there in their mind. So the first thing is to tell them, about the truth behind it, the pros and cons. So there's nothing to hide. And then we have to talk about where would India stand be if we have to become a developed nation. Okay, the yardstick by which development is assessed is the power utilization. And then India doesn't have other sources of power. We have a hydroelectric power, everything is limited. We have bad quality coal, etc., etc. So we are forced to go into nuclear power. So if nuclear power means then how advanced we are, how safe we are in the technology that we are using. This is what we want to bring out to the public. But that is not always 100% success, because I told you the lobbyists are always behind. They will say that we are hiding things, we are trying to tell them that everything is fine, inside something is happening. Two incidents, accidents do take place. We don't say no. But safety is the most important thing, and there is no other industry which has utmost safety norms. Now, even a small problem will shut down the reactor. It's got we have to tell them the reactor has got automatic shutdown processes. And what happened in Chernobyl and elsewhere, we have to tell them that those things were not the way that a reactor is run, and that is not the way we are doing it here. So it is a lot of problem. It is not an easy job to do. But then much later, what happened, then VRC came, they started a cell, okay, awareness cell, and then there was quite a number of people. So whenever we used to organize, sometimes we used to call the public, different types of people, into our IG car and give the lectures, or else we will go out. Okay, we gone all around and trying to, with the collaborations of the particular college, the university, they used to make the necessary arrangements, and then we used to bring in the staff, and this is how the public awareness program is going on, is still going on. And that is what DA is doing. Now, what WIN could do is join hands with them, okay, and then not only talk about what we used to do was about the reactor. That is what was frightening them. You see a reactor and somebody is living close by that. But that's not the only thing. We have to talk about other technologies. The application in medicine, when people come and ask questions, are you not scared to stay in IGCAR? These people would have gone and taken 10, 20 CT scans, expose them to X-rays, mammograms, not knowing that they are exposing themselves to ionizing radiation. The concept of ionizing radiation itself is not gone deep into their mind. Okay, so then we have to talk to them about what we call as the risk versus benefits. So you cannot live. You are taking a flight to Delhi and coming down here. I said, would you like to go in a bus or a train or a bullock cart? So there you are taking a risk. So the same risk exists here, but the safety norms are also in place. So this is how handling the public is a very, very delicate issue. Okay, this is my own experience. Then we come down. Another thing we do is we have to talk to them in the local language. Okay, so this again we found, and then we have to come down to their level and make them speak. Otherwise, they're scared to ask questions. They think this is a very kind of a hi-fi technology. Will I ask the wrong question? This, of course, everybody has when we talk about something which we are not familiar with. So this public awareness is one of the major mission of WIN also, would be, in my opinion. Now then, this is one aspect. The other aspect is, of course, to uh, attract young people to come to join the sector. Okay, so there again, what happens is, what is prevailing is a lot of ignorance. People don't know the availability of the courses that they may take to join into this sector. Ignorance. It's simply, today it's IT world. Okay, of course, we still cannot call everybody to come and join nuclear sciences and engineering, because again, it is a very, very narrowed down discipline. Everybody cannot become a nuclear scientist. But there may be somewhere in the some remote corner of India. You take, for instance, our Dr. Abdul Kalam himself. Where does he come from? A very, very obscure village. Did he not become a great scientist? What caused him? You have to see the history behind that. So probably when we take this to every nook and corner of the country, we may succeed in bringing out the best among the aspiring students by informing them, telling them about all the courses available, the pros and cons, all that they can do to help the nuclear industry. So this, in my opinion, is the mission and vision we could think of. Is that all right? Maybe you can proceed with the next question to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, yeah, I totally understand the point that you're saying about, people being afraid of asking questions and the myths that are, widespread. I don't think it's just in India, it's everywhere. People who don't engage with nuclear technology, they are kind of unaware of what are the benefits, and they only see the bad things. So, better late than never, I would say. And it's a great thing that we've started this initiative, and there's a long way to go. So my next question is for Dr. Jyoti Gupta. Now, we are more and more clear about the mission and vision of this organization as a whole. But while all of you were putting your heads together to formulate this organization, I'm sure there must have been certain goals and objectives that you set for yourself as an organization, which you would want to pursue in, let's say, the coming years. So could you enlighten us a little bit about that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Vaishnavi, for the question. You have heard a saying that you teach a man, you teach a man. But you teach a woman, you teach a generation. So women have this tendency to learn something and share it with their loved ones, their family, their relatives. So we want to use this potential of women to spread awareness about the benefits of nuclear radiation in our country. We are saying that women they are excelling in all the fields. Same is true with nuclear, but we think and we believe that they are not getting the deserved recognition. So when we set up this organization, we were clear in mind that we wanted to encourage more women to join nuclear sector. We wanted to empower them by providing them the designated platform. And most importantly, we wanted to spread awareness about the benefits of nuclear and radiation applications. I hope that answered your question.
Sure, ma'am, definitely. So that's very well said, that if you educate a woman, then you educate many people actually, and then she'll share it further with the family and the community. So that's well said. And that with that, actually, I would like to ask Uma ma'am this question that, that as Jyoti ma'am said that, if you educate a woman, then she'll educate multiple people. So this is like, the women actually they are educating more people, and but on the other hand, if I take one the thing that Mary ma'am said, that there's a lot of misconception or like myths amongst the general public itself. Women opting for opting for nuclear, then people are even more apprehensive that, with the radiation thing and everything, women are more prone to, probably, I don't know, for some kind of, like, they can get more affected by this. So like, over the years, I think, I don't know if you can highlight something on that, like, that perception still continues, and it's women in nuclear, like, women pursuing their passion in nuclear sector is not considered suitable. So what would be the wins, strategy for, like, squashing such kind of myths, and for the women especially?
Yes, you are right. In India, the technical fields are not very attractive to women even today, much less in the field of nuclear energy. While, of course, the sciences have had more participation from women and have increased over the past decades. I would not exactly call this as a myth or a misunderstanding. It is more towards the job opportunities available after you finish a course in nuclear science or engineering. At Win India, we plan to popularize the various professional outlets available for women, and also aim to a synergy between the government, the industry, and the academics to attract more and more women. Start them young would be the motto. So what we could organize some workshops and go to schools and catch them young to spread this awareness, what exactly they would learn when they become a nuclear professional, and how exactly they can contribute to the economy of the country. Like I say that 50% of the population are women, and if 50% don't participate in nation building, you cannot achieve greater heights. Same thing is true with the nuclear industry, that I would have a dream that at least 50% of the workforce are women in future years to come. Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. We all hope the same. That someday we have the equality, or probably maybe more women working. Definitely. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in fact, now speaking of the organization in general, so it's Women in Nuclear India. But there's one thing which everybody seems to notice right at the beginning, that there is a single male member in this board. The organization, the entire board, has a single male member. So my specific question regarding this is for Dr. Manju Gupta. I mean, what was the thought process, or maybe the perspective of the organization in general, to include a male member to your board?
Certainly, yes, there's an outlier over here, I would say. Having said that, well, Win India, Women in Nuclear in India is the title. But everybody is welcome, whoever promotes women in nuclear in India. And it so happens that, everybody had this thought in mind somewhere that yes, there's a platform required. But nothing against if a man brings this to the shape and launches it. So all welcome. Only in future, of course, since it's women in nuclear, I expect that the majority remains women, so that they also represent as a role model to the women in nuclear sector, but not against any men. And so, as long as they are professionals, as long as our thoughts match and the intentions are noble towards the vision and the mission of the organization or Win India Association, why not? And welcome, Nitendra. Absolutely, you are most welcome, and thank you so much to give a shape to this idea. Great.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the question. So, I mean, yeah, it's necessary that we do have somebody who gives a shape to the organization, and sometimes it's like, as many more people that can help, it's better. The more, the merrier. It's something of that sort, I would say. So, well, and so now my next question is for Mrs. Archana Yadav. We heard during the questions on our mission and the goal in general of this organization that we want to add more and more women and to promote women empowerment in this nuclear sector. So I have actually a two-part question for you. I mean, you've been associated with the academia for over 8 years, if I'm correct. So in this entire year, I mean, in these 8 years, you've seen women in general who are taking up, they're opting for careers in different domains of engineering principles. So why do you think, so the first question is, why do you think that they should take up nuclear engineering in particular? And the second part of this question is that over these years of teaching, have you seen any transition in particular in terms of the number of women who are taking up nuclear sciences?
Thank you, Vaishnavi, for the question. I think this question has been hitting hard since many years, that why women want to explore the engineering regime. They're not meant for it. But if you look back, there are plenty of examples where women have entered into engineering disciplines and they have done wonders. And if we are there in every regime, why not nuclear? We are there from the space mission to even the best of physics discoveries. Then why not nuclear? What is the hurdle? And why do you want to have a demarcation in the first instance? We have not left any stone unturned in these years in any of the areas that women have ventured into. So I think this should be an opportunity for everyone to opt into a new field. I completely agree with the previous speakers stating that there are less opportunities for, in general, students who are studying nuclear engineering. But this will slowly be eradicated because I think you don't have an option other than to go for nuclear. And as and when the applications are going to widespread into the commercial sector in a larger scale, the opportunities will automatically increase. And then you have the world available for you in terms of opportunities. Again, another thing, women are by nature very good at multitasking, and no one can compete us in that aspect. So why not the nuclear energy sector be benefited by these inherent advantages that God has given us? So let's bring in that different perspective. Let's bring in that new ideas which women have into the sector and see what changes can we bring in. And multitasking, I think it's one of the requirements when you're working in the nuclear regime. You look at so many things at one time, and in case of an accident, now the entire scenario has changed. So you're not going into a conventional process. Things are changing at a faster pace, and we need to have quick decision making attributes coming into picture. And women are good at it. They are best at it, I think. And all of you, everybody will agree to it. All major discoveries till date, and even in nuclear, started with women scientists, with women experimentalists taking the lead. Of course, they faced many hurdles because they were not acknowledged in the way they should have been. It is only when some other scientists took up an equally good experimental outlook there, they were recognized. And it has been 100 years, more than a century, when Madame Curie got a Nobel Prize for radioactivity. What best can we do other than to acknowledge the contributions, the inputs that women can add to this? And I think this is the best platform. This is an excellent platform to start. So as Donna Strickland, our Nobel laureate in physics, said, we need to celebrate women physicists because they are out there and we need to bring them out. And you must be honored that you are one of those who are working in this field with utmost dedication as men do. So I think that is enough motivation. There is enough scope for everyone to contribute, and we should take up a career. Moving on to the second question, wherein how do I see the transition between female participants? I think by and large, engineering has been suffering by this major you may say, difference between male and female participants, but we have seen that there are odd ones in terms of women who have excelled in their field, and engineering have a plenty of them to look forward. So in terms of the shift that we may see, it's not a paradigm shift. I don't say that today people have increased affinity for women working in nuclear sciences. Rather, the shift is again gradual. But I'm sure as and when you enlighten people with options, they will come forward. So in particular, if I talk about the experience I have had in Amity, I see that parents these days are taking more interest in their children, specifically female childs taking interest in nuclear, and they don't have any apprehension. I am surprised that these questions of whether radioactivity is harmful to you, specifically to women, I don't get those questions any day. Rather, they are more interested. Can we see your labs? Can we see what you're doing? How do you handle radioactive sources? So that's the best thing. That notion which people had that this is not meant for women is abolished. So this question doesn't stand valid, that women these days are facing some problems that uh, naturally, or since God has made them that way, they are more prone to any radiation defects. Rather, I don't know how correct I am, but we don't really do experiments on female mice, and that's because hormonally they change so quickly that you don't actually see the effect of that exposure only. So I am not a biologist, but this somehow gave me a hint that why is it so? So that itself implies that God has given you some inherent stability to override all these things. And of course, at certain times of your lifespan, certain organs are more prone to exposure. That is right, but we have sufficient safety mechanisms incorporated in our nuclear sector. And as Dr. Mary Mohan Kumar mentioned, that safety is by far the most looked into aspect in nuclear sector. And we are the only ones who are looking into the defense in depth aspects. We are not relying on just one factor, rather, we have a couple of them aligned. So the problem of safety, the problem of vulnerable times when you are working with nuclear energy sources or with radioactivity shouldn't be a concern. And if I look at the performance of my students, the girl candidates or the female candidates behave or perform equally well. Some of our toppers, most of our toppers are mostly girls. And no concerns or no complaints are received even if they work in the industry. They're equally competent, they are equally dedicated towards the mission. And I think in the times to come, with major awarenesses taking place, this scenario is going to improve, and we will have more female candidates coming into this sector and bringing accolades to this industry equally as they have been doing. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you so much for touching up on so many aspects and letting us know that at least that like as you explained from your experience, that at the academic level at least the parents and like the people are supportive of the nuclear education, or like they are. So we hope that this grows and eventually like more and more female students and otherwise in general other students also take up nuclear engineering without any hesitation in the future. And we hope that we get some again women Nobel laureate for physics or for some invention in nuclear. So that with that I would like to move on to Dr. Akansha. So ma'am, like everybody has been touching upon the academic aspects, like that at academics level we need to engage more youth. So like I would like to like have your aspect your perspective on the point that what modifications or like what changes we can have in the academic curriculum, like present academic curriculum, which can encourage students in general to not just women but in general to everybody to take up the nuclear engineering. So what what are your thoughts on the same?
So thank you, Sunera, for this question. So I have been there. When I was studying, I was in school, I was looking for a field which I can go for. But at time when I passed my school, I couldn't decide. So I opted for general physics so that I can have this option to choose whatever field I want to go in. And then I found this nuclear program in Delhi University, which was very interesting, very motivating, but it wasn't have been heard of by many people. So what is important is that we have many high education courses. You can opt for your master's or for your bachelor's for the nuclear program. But what is important is that as a student, when you are growing up, you are thinking about your career. If you know about these options at that time, that will help you to channelize your energy and look for a path where you want to go in future. So what is important is that to the youth, we tell them what are the problems, what is the energy crisis, what is the climate change, what is nuclear. So we have many options to choose from, like renewable sources of energy and so on, but also to just tell them what all exists, to just expose them to different aspects which we can use to solve the problem of energy crisis or climate change, because we are the one who knows that it is coming and they are the one who are going to face it in their future. So we should educate them more about the issues and the possible solutions, with nuclear being one of them. And then we should tell them different aspects of nuclear, not just a thing which you read in a book, because what you read you forget, but what you see will remain in your mind forever. So if there are simple experiments or simple examples, by visiting the science museum, or we have so many organizations in India where they can have welcoming students just to tell them about different aspects which they can see themselves in the field of nuclear energy, that can tell them, okay, this is what it is. And when they see, they will go and look for it. Now we have internet, so they can go to whatever they want to know. And I think the information and knowledge is there. But to have, that spark, to create that spark in the child is important. And once you have that spark, then they will follow it forever. And this motivation can come through the curriculum by having more and more demonstrations or experiments, or very simple, concepts. Like, for example, I'm working in fusion, and we have ring-shaped tokamak. And the very basic question is, why you have a ring? Why don't you have a sphere or a square? And I happen to see a very simple demonstration to answer that. It was done for the school kids by a lab based in Netherlands, and it was so amazing. You just take a black box, you spray some aerosol, which is not dangerous, so you can just visualize the particles, and just you puff the air out of different shapes. And irrespective of you choose a rectangle, square, triangle, circle, the particles will bond together to form a torus. And this is the natural tendency of the particles. Have I read that in a book? I'm sure I would have not remembered. But having seen that, this simple concept stay in your mind. The second important aspect is that you have motivated the youth, but you also have to teach their family and their friends who have this myth that nuclear is dangerous, because they don't see the radiation. And if you are afraid of things you see, but you are more afraid of the things that you don't see. So we have to educate the child and their family that it is not dangerous. We have to tell them about the safety norms that are in place to make sure that everything stays safe. And this can be done only through education. We can educate the child itself at the very young level so that he knows about these safety aspects. We can have awareness to the general public so that they know about this. And I have been there because I am the one who asked this question to my professor when I joined nuclear. And I asked my professor, sir, I have joined this nuclear program, but I have so many questions coming from my family and friends. And I'm happy he was there. So he's late Dr. Raghuveer Singh, and I will forever remember him. And he has been my role model. And his words was like, radiation doesn't know if a male is standing or if a female is standing. It will harm both the people in the same way, with the same physics. Definitely you have to, restrain yourself, or you have to be safe when you are carrying a life, when you are pregnant. But there are so many other things that you don't do when you are pregnant, this being one of them. But inherently, like, radiation will not differ for a male radiation will say, okay, this is a female, I'm going to damage her more as compared to a male. So these kind of myths, as a teacher, I remember myself. I'm sure if Archana is lucky that she doesn't get these questions, but I remember when we asked these questions, we both were together asking to ourselves. So I'm happy that people are now not asking, these questions which doesn't make sense. They are asking more logical questions like how you're handling a radiation source, which is very good to know. The myths is clearing away, and I hope we can have the same clarification, or same disappearance of myth all over India, not just in the metro cities, but everywhere in India. So that is, I think, the more important message that we should take for the youth. So I hope I answered your question.
Sure, ma'am.
Sure, and in fact, I totally agree. But we are seeing progress in terms of more and more awareness campaigns being conducted by the schools to make the children aware of the present dangers of the climate change, and so it's going there. But yeah, you're right. We definitely need to push it even further so that we don't waste another 15 or 20 years just telling people about that. Okay, nuclear can help you, but we rather want them to be up and running in terms of taking part actively. So now we all know this. I think everybody has faced this, and we are aware of this thing, that the transition that happens from education towards employment, it heavily relies on the incentives that are offered by the job industry in particular. No matter what field a student opts for, they always, one of the motivating.
I think maybe we're facing some problem from her end. So I'll just continue. I think probably till the time she resumes. That this is very clear that students mostly opt for like probably mechanical engineering or electrical engineering because they see that the market is there for the job. The job is there. They are going to have a secure job if they are going to opt for computer science, or probably they'll get placed in Facebook or Google if they're going to have these kind of they're going to choose these fields. And whereas I think probably for the nuclear sector, this domain is the job market probably is still limited. So with that that transition from academic to the industry is actually very much, I think, dependent on that. And with that, I would actually like to ask Dr. Manju Gupta that, ma'am, you have, I think, spent almost more than over 35 years in the industry. You have worked with NPCIL, you have worked with Arriva India, you were leading over there. So, how journey during this time, what was what was your journey in the public, working during in the public sector and in a private sector? So what was your experience in the nuclear in the industry side? Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. I think your mic.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, to begin with, if you ask me, was it easy to change from, I was working for a public sector and then shifted to private sector. It wasn't easy, frankly. To be honest, the decision making was very difficult with all, questions clouding your mind, whether you're going to succeed or not, and whether I'll be able to handle everything the way I have been, or various questions which you have in mind about private sector. It is very difficult, very competitive, and survival is like everyday task, sort of. But having said that, I would say, as far as challenges are concerned, whether you work in public or private sector or public and private enterprise, in nuclear sector is not different than in any other sector. For a woman, the challenges remain the same. Like you want to succeed by becoming a superwoman at home, at work. You want to be on the top. I mean, these are all with all of us, with any professional woman. These questions will be always there, and we will be, and that's why we say we are multitasking. We are, running the show, always trying to run the show at the cost of your own health, your own ambitions, whatever. But yes, so I think many other speakers also have touched upon this aspect, that it is no different. The challenge comes only at a specific time or period of life in a woman's period of time in a woman's life, and that is when she wants to go for motherhood, pregnancy time, and that also only if she has a job which exposes her to radiation during that period. Largely, otherwise, like I was most of the time I was in the engineering, so I was at headquarters. So it was only during that time that I would think of being in the nuclear power plant near some radiation zone or something. Of course, the question didn't arise at that time because there was no such need. Otherwise, it is all safe. So nuclear sector as such for women doesn't pose any different challenge, as long as you are able to handle every other challenge like in any other field. But yes, how do you handle this is again, the factors are the same. It is supportive family and supportive co-workers. Organization is same everywhere most of the time. Some are good towards, more oriented towards females, their facilities and all that. But otherwise, largely it is the support of women, support of co-workers, and I have been really fortunate in that sense that I always happened that I got help from every angle, every source, whomever, and life was enjoyable. However, I do remember that the distinct difference that I felt at the time when I found that the time constraints, the time given to me to explore any possible solutions to a problem. My first shift was to engineering consultancy directly from NPCIL and moving to UK and to an engineering consultancy, and I have to handle the a British client for giving some engineering solutions, and this was the difference. Whether it is in India or abroad, it would be the same for a private company, working in a private company, that there the time is money, and the decision making layers are much less, so you have to come up with a solution very fast and in an implementable way. Whereas in public sector, I do remember that whenever I have faced any new problem, I always had time to explore different solutions. I think it's also depending upon the type of industry, because the public sector which I worked with, NPCIL, was a utility, was the owner, and owner obviously is the owner of design, engineering, everything. So they have to come out with the perfect solution. Whereas an engineering consultancy is the service provider. So there the time constraints and those are on a different scale. But yes, I had to tune my mind to that, frankly, because that was a major shift in the culture. It was a cultural shift for me. The second one I would say is proficiency in soft skills. You see, when I have to give to the customer my report in Word and quickly come out with numbers in Excel and PowerPoint presentation, and I'm talking of a time when 10 years back or 12 years back, one is in public sector, we really are, pampered. we are, we have supporting staff. I don't have to correct anything on my own, except some small things, but otherwise I would be dependent on the supporting staff. So that was a big challenge. That was in fact much major challenge than the first one. How do I proofread my Word document? Do I know how to check it, how to format it? Oh, I spent a lot of time in learning that, and that continues even now with my journey. But this is something which I would advise, that this is one major thing. You have to be hands-on, everything on your own. Even the MD of the organization is doing their own presentation, making their own PPT, and nice PPTs that too. It's not just some basic thing. So these were the two basic, I would say, differences I faced. Otherwise, in terms of challenges, it is unlike any other industry I think a woman would face. And also the solutions lie at the same place. You have to have really supportive people around you who want to see you grow. So yes, only thing what I really felt is that yes, in nuclear sector, definitely the representation of women is less. It is even with the IAEA 2019 data, I find it is 22.4% all over the world in nuclear sector, and IAEA promotes gender parity in a big way, diversity. And somebody had mentioned during our interviews during this interview session that there are some skills women are good at, and I'm sure they can use that skill to the benefit of nuclear industry. So yes, that is one thing, but I think scene is much changing, is definitely different. And again, what I find is it is the IT related, or it's still the core engineering related is still less. The women entering in the core engineering field is still less. Take an example of NPCIL, like within few years of my past life in NPCIL, so many young girls came into the R&D, where it is about instrumentation and control, and where you are using software-based or computer-based, systems. And there were so many girls. So that changed the entire scenario in the office. Like then you would see so many women, so many girls. But I would say that also must change. That core engineering also should be a field which should become attractive for women. At the moment, it is again the desk job or the more R&D related job which is becoming attractive. And at the same time, at the plant site, nuclear power plant sites, the women are really few, and there also you would find women in commissioning or of again INC much more than any other field. I remember having this is something I thought I would share. I faced this challenge when we used to be there at plant site, nuclear power plant site, for commissioning. I have stayed there for a month or so, at a stretch. And the commissioning phase would be, the timings were really uncertain. It would extend to night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You are not sure when that system will get commissioned. And now what do? You have the urge and the basic necessities except the administration building, which is somewhere far. And in the night, you don't venture out to go there all alone. So what used to happen is you tell your male colleagues, they are there as a guard outside, you use the male toilets. And that was a little bit of initial hesitancy was there, but there was no other choice. And it was not by intention that the plants didn't have it. nobody ever thought. So when I approached the management and the director, and he said, I have been noticing this, Manju, I know that, and I realize it. You of course now bring it, and it was nice that you continue to do your work, discharge your duty with all these challenges. But we realized, and next time when we went, it was all there. So it is just the matter of underrepresentation. Seriously, like, if there are more women, that needs will be felt to be provided. And though this is a small thing, it is not technical, it is not career oriented, but these are basic needs which irritate you and when they are needed. So okay, having said that, I think things are changing. I'm sure with Win India platform, we will be able to reach out to more women to enter into this nuclear field. And it is not just the power plant, as everybody said, medicine, agriculture. Actually, nuclear in agriculture is so much important, and especially in a country where, in India, where the food scarcity, and we depend upon the weather conditions. And so it's important that that field is also explored and promoted more and more. And in fact, entrepreneurship can be much more in this field, and women can do wonders in this field. Anybody, for that matter. So that's one thing. Yeah, and if I have to talk about what kept me going, is like anybody else. Everybody, all of us are ambitious. When we enter a professional world, we enter with the thought that we will manage everything and we will succeed at all the places, be it at home or be it at work. And that was the ambition, to succeed. At the same time, yes, so important to be open to evolve, to adapt to the changing situations, and quickly adapt, not carry the baggage all the time. And the final thing is, of course, what holds you is the strength of knowledge and experience. If you are strong, you will be recognized. You keep fighting, you will be given your due. And that has always come handy. It will come handy to everybody, regardless of women or men, and it will beat any challenge. So, yeah, I think all ladies, welcome to the nuclear engineering world, nuclear science world. And that would be my take on this question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was such a pleasure. It was so delightful to hear about your journey. And I think almost I could see from all end points, every one or the other, every member was nodding at some point. That I think almost everybody could relate to some point. In fact, I would actually just like to, I cannot control myself. Maybe if Uma ma'am, or we have other people who would like to add to something, because I was seeing some nodding, lot of nodding and affirmations.
Yeah, it was a challenge for all of us to work in the field of nuclear energy, and especially when she was saying that when we had to go to the plant site, we had basic difficulties. And now things have improved a lot, and there are a lot of, even at BARC, I see that the number of women are steadily increasing. And so I think we as role models could promote how we have come up, and then that would be encouraging for other girls to join. Of course, there are so many avenues as of now. It's the power and the non-power applications. And there are so many avenues in which we can contribute. The academics, there are so many courses which are being done in many colleges. So of course, the women would come up even in the nuclear field. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am, so much for adding. This is a very good point, I'll say. And actually, it's good to know that things are like improving now for with the coming time. And with, as you said, that the it's now nuclear is not just restricted to the power generation. There are like more applications, whether like as Manju ma'am said, it's in agriculture. There are medical applications. I think nowadays like it's expanding. It's not just limited to the power generation. So I would actually next I would like to ask Kritika ma'am that ma'am, we like you have worked with like you two have been in the industry and you have worked with lot of major companies like Oil India Limited and L&T. So I would like to like if you could elaborate more on this part, like how nuclear is not just restricted to power, but now it's associating with other industries like oil and gas and heavy engineering. So if you could just elaborate on that.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, that's a good question, Sunena. The perception of nuclear being just related to the nuclear reactor or anything that like that is has to be changed, because whenever we talk about nuclear, yeah, people, the first thing that comes to the mind is nuclear reactor, and people ask me, you are a nuclear engineer, so do you work in a nuclear reactor? I say no, it's not that. So this when we talk about radiation, it has widespread applications, as already said. Like it can be segregated into industrial, medical, research, consumer products, and scanning facilities. So in India's private sector, it's mostly used in the nucleonic gauges that is used, and mostly my clients are using in nucleonic gauges, and where they face problems, and mostly like blood irradiators and therapeutic and scanning purposes, they're using radiation. So it has widespread applications. And being in this sector for past 8 years, I've helped my clients. I have around 600 to 800 clients that are associated with the Nuvia, and and I provide consultancy to them to work in according to the regulatory guidelines, that is the AERB. So AERB has set many parameters that you have to work according to this, but everybody is not educated, or everybody is not able to understand the regulatory guideline, because all of them do not have this nuclear background. So there they face some issues, and this is where I help those clients that how to deal with these things, and it has to be done in the best and the safest manner. Like Oil India, they are using in nucleonic gauges. When I worked with Unilever, they were using some radioactive chemicals, that too around 20 years back. So I supported them in getting rid of those chemicals according to the AERB regulations. So all these various kind of projects I handle, and I'm very lucky in this case, because if I was in some other sector, I would be doing the same thing again and again, repeating all those things again. But whenever I come across these different problems from the clients, and when I provide them solution, I feel very lucky that okay, every month or every 2 months I'm getting new projects to handle, and I really feel motivated when I complete those projects and I help my clients to achieve better. So this is what I've done, and I think it is very motivating for me to continue in this field.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you for elaborating on this point.
Yeah, yes, Manju ma'am. We have Mrs. Manju Gupta who wants to add something. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Yes, in addition to that, I also wanted to add that these major companies, their association with nuclear sector is like all have a different in different ways they are associated, but more than anybody else, Larsen and Toubro is a big time manufacturer. It provides so many components to nuclear sector in construction, in major nuclear components of the reactor, and there are many other such big companies who are associated with nuclear sector in terms of providing nuclear components and also the construction of the nuclear power plant. So yes, the opportunities lie with these major companies. Even for that matter, like when you talk of Oil India, they ultimately the government is also pushing, saying that all these resources are ultimately going to go down, and we are going to fall short of these resources. Nuclear is definitely the field which will grow and which is required to combat climate change. And in India, you need to increase its share more. So these companies, these are rich companies. All oil companies are rich companies. Nuclear needs their support in terms of equity. They invest in it, they learn, and then later on they enter into the nuclear field. They also can have joint ventures. So as per the regulatory guidelines, the charter is amended to make entry of other public sectors possible as a junior partner, and they can invest in the nuclear power plants today, and they can become partner over a period. They can also become the utility, the owners of the nuclear power plant. So that is one of the big change that has happened in the past, and this is one of the steps that government has taken to encourage nuclear power, or to improve the growth of nuclear power in the country, as a part of their commitment to the COP to combat the climate change. So I thought I will just add to this that these companies, even though, okay, in terms of they use gauges, or they use these instruments in the industry for their own use, but they can also bring equity, and at some point of time they might hire or harbor an ambition to become the owner of the nuclear power plant generation, right? Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for this addition. Speaking of diverse domains and the different roles that nuclear is playing, so my next question is for Dr. Manpreet Sethi. Ma'am, as you know, throughout this discussion till now, we have talked about the different applications of nuclear, such as the energy applications, be it radiobiology, medical applications, and all these things. But even after all these fields, nuclear security is very unconventional as a path. I personally know very few people who have taken up a career in nuclear security. So my question is that why do you think it is important for more and more people to engage with this into nuclear security as a career option? And secondly, how is it impacting all the other domains of nuclear technology?
Thank you very much, Vaishnavi. It's a pleasure to be among such accomplished women in the nuclear field. My colleagues have already explained to you the philosophy. And if you'll just give me a minute before I come to your specific question on nuclear security, I just wanted to add there. It's been very well articulated by everyone, but I think the purpose of this organization, which will largely be composed of women, is to encourage new members. It is to motivate the existing, members in the field, but it's also to celebrate women. But despite doing all this, I don't think it is to exclude the men. Because I think the reason that all of us are sitting here in these positions today is largely because our fathers, our husbands, or our mentors, encouraged us to be here. So therefore, while it's Win India, I think that winning will happen only when we do it together. And that's the reason that Dr. Nitendra is such an important member of this group, because he conceptualized what this organization can be and how women can be motivated, encouraged, and celebrated through an organization of this kind. So I would be very happy to have more men joining this in order to sensitize and support the kind of organization that we want to be. But having said that, let me get back to your specific question on nuclear security. Dr. Mary Mohan Kumar started by explaining to us how central nuclear safety issues have been to nuclear power development, and how much focus the nuclear industry itself puts on nuclear safety. Now, nuclear safety is about the safe operation of the nuclear power plants, of nuclear facilities, so that no accidents of any kind happen and that there is a safe operation. Nuclear security is more specific, and it is about the physical security of nuclear power plants in order to ensure that there is no leakage or there is no sabotage or any kind of an attack on a nuclear facility. Now, while the concept of nuclear security is very old, it actually came into our consciousness after 9/11, and we've just, commemorated 19 years of 9/11 actually in this month. So that's the time when people woke up to the idea of nuclear terrorism and how the non-state actor could actually do some such kind of an activity that you don't want to happen and create problem for a nation. So it was in 2010 that President Obama of the US, he put together this concept of nuclear security, and he articulated it through 4 summits that happened. And the idea of this summit process of having these 4, gatherings of political leaders was to bring attention to the idea of nuclear security at the highest level, so that these leaders would come to understand what are the risks that we are dealing with and have some collective understanding of how to address the risks. So as a result of this process, we had domestic legislation, which was adopted in many nations in order to ensure that no unauthorized access to nuclear material, also to radiological material, and most importantly, since you mentioned, the uses in medical and industrial fields, orphan sources, things which have been discarded after the utility of that source is over, and that is not returned to the organization where it should go, which in India's case is the Department of Atomic Energy. So building up an inventory of sources which is passed on to universities, industries, hospitals, and then getting it back to ensure that it's not used anywhere else. So domestic legislation happened, and some international conventions were articulated, because nuclear security is a national responsibility. It's not that the IAEA can come and do nuclear security in my country. I have to have my processes of nuclear security, but they follow a certain international guideline or benchmarks according to which you do these processes. In a country like India, I would say that understanding nuclear security is extremely important for 2 reasons. One is we live in an area which has a high presence of terrorist organizations. We all understand, our neighbor to the west, Pakistan, according to international assessments, has as many as 32 terrorist organizations with a transnational reach. Besides, perhaps 10 more which are internally directed, which are domestic, for domestic purposes. So as a result of that, acts of terrorism, cross-border terrorism, India has been used to. But if we want to avoid chances of nuclear terrorism, which will be a great problem for the country, then you have to look at the concept of nuclear security, which means having enough sensitization to our border ports, to our airports, at our the borders, all of that, in order to make sure that no such pilferage happens from one country into another. And therefore, the idea of Nuclear Security Summit was that each country is responsible for its nuclear material, and it must have the domestic and the other legislation in order to make sure that nothing like this happens. The second reason for India to be concerned about nuclear security is because our own nuclear facilities are growing. We have such an ambitious plan for our nuclear power program. Already, if you see, 7 new nuclear reactors are currently under construction. We all, and many of my colleagues have spoken about the need for nuclear energy as part of India's energy basket, because our electricity requirements are huge. If you look at our per capita availability of electricity in general today, it's only 1,000 kilowatt hours compared to, for instance, if you look at the Western, developed countries, US or Europe, they are like 15,000 kilowatt hours per capita electricity availability. So there's a wide gap that exists here. And for our economic growth and development, nuclear energy is extremely important. So as our own facilities expand, the sensitization on nuclear security is extremely important so that there is no chance of theft or insider threat, because there are sleeper cells of terrorist organizations in our own country, and there are terrorist organizations who have expressed interest in getting to nuclear material. So therefore, it's extremely important that nuclear security is given adequate attention so that our power program can expand the way we want it to in order to meet our electricity requirements. Thank you, Vaishnavi.
Thank you, ma'am. For I think that's a very critical aspect that has been touched upon by you, with reference to nuclear security, because so considering one aspect, which is the engineering side, there is the aspect, like safeguarding and protecting protection of the nuclear material. So that is, I believe, very critical aspect that has been touched upon by you, and thank you very much for elaborating and enlightening us on this point. Moving on to that, I would like to ask Dr. Jyoti Gupta, ma'am, that you know with your career graph. So you have, I think, I believe you have worked with Indian organization as well, and you have the experience of working in an international organization. So I would like to understand what has been your experience over the years working in a national and in an international organization. What were the similarities and the differences that you observed over your journey?
Thanks, Nana, for the question. In terms of similarity, I would come back again to the topic of contribution of women in the workforce, which I believe is small compared to their male counterparts across the globe. So it's an issue all across the globe. I remember it was around 6 years back when I was working abroad. I was the only female in the lab. And Manju ma'am, the problem you faced in the field, I faced it in a lab, fully functioning lab. I faced the same situation. So you can understand the situation. And I remember a fellow mate of mine coming to me and saying, you know why we don't have any female in this lab? Because it's not safe for female. You should definitely look for some other career options. And soon, if you want to have a family afterwards. So you see, workplace stigmas like this, they are very prevalent all across the globe. But I believe with time, especially in the last decade, and with proper education, things have started improving. Developed nations were the first ones who took the initiative to decrease this gender gap. They began empowering their women by recognizing their talent and contributing their contribution to the society. I believe India is following on those footsteps, a little late, but better than never, I believe. So if you look at the big institutes such as PARC, gender gap is declining at a faster pace compared to the regional institutes. An initiative like Win India, I believe, is a step in the right direction to improve things further. I hope that answered your question.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your experience. It's very delightful to know that, even in the, as you said, BRC and in other Indian industries, it's decreasing. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, now if we shift the focus of this discussion a little bit towards the role of nuclear in general life, and particularly towards energy applications. So my next question is for Dr. Nitendra Singh. Now, Dr. Singh, if you recall that during the launch event, Professor R.V. Grover, he said that one of the most important concerns today is to educate the people about, the advantage or the importance of having nuclear energy in the current energy mix for India specifically. So based on that question, could you tell us, please, how would Win India plan to address this concern?
Thank you for actually highlighting this point. Actually, this is one of the myth or misconception which most of the green parties, I would say, have established, that nuclear and renewables and other are separate out. I'll start with the requirement first. I think most of the people have already mentioned the various aspects of nuclear energy and nuclear technology in general. But if you see for the development of any nation, the energy requirement is must. And the country like India, we have more than 1 billion and we know our infrastructure very well. This is one of the major thing which we need to like focus on. If we really want to develop, we need our electricity demand and all sort of thing. However, the point is, if you look the present generation of electricity, it is mostly using the fossil fuels. So what are the repercussions of it? Like you are adding more it to greenhouse effect, and which in turn leading to climate change. People generally don't understand that climate change is not affecting me or something like this. It's going on somewhere. It's not like this. What they need to understand, like if there is certain increment in greenhouse gases percentage or the average surface temperature of the earth up to I mean above certain limit, then the changes are everywhere. Like if you notice these days, the number of hurricanes, number of floods and everything, it it has increased, which in turn reduces even the drought. If you say the rainfall has reduced, and it is in a way affecting your farmers, in a way affecting your day-to-day life. So the all these things are very well connected. Production of electricity, you are putting your greenhouse things to develop. People are moving fast, they're using more vehicles, which is again adding to the carbon footprints and things like that. So what we need to understand, like why nuclear is important and what is energy mix in general, which you should understand. So when we talk about energy mix, it is basically the renewable energies altogether. So the main idea of energy mix is to eradicate the fossil fuel system and you establish the entire renewable energies. When I talk about renewable energy, it encompasses all the forms of sources. So wind, solar, geothermal, tidal, whatever you name, all of them, including nuclear. So what has been done so far, like they have separated out. The nuclear has not been considered as a part of renewable energy. I don't know, because of so many notions. So the idea here is that why it is important to include nuclear energy as a part of energy mix. So here one thing I want to tell, which is known as base load power supply. So your base load power supply is something which can generate your electricity or power for 24/7 without depending on climate or air or sun or like waves or anything, which are the natural phenomena which are dependent on, again, I'm saying it is dependent on climate and the weather and everything. So you need something which can give you the uninterrupted power supply. So far, these things are done by using coal, gas, or something, because you just keep on adding and you keep on generating stuff. So if you really want to address that sort of heavy uninterrupted power supply, you mainly come across with two sources, if you understand. One is nuclear power plant and one could be hydroelectric power plant. But there are limitations with hydroelectric power plant. You cannot have it everywhere. And then the concept comes about the energy density. The energy density means like how much energy you can harness from a small amount of fuel. So, you know, we all have one of the biggest dam, like Tehri Dam in India. It is one of the big hydropower plant. So you know how much water we need to have a power supply of this. I'm not going into numbers, but nuclear is something which you can use in a small amount. You can generate 24/7 power supply at a larger number, and 24/7. So what we need to do is to replace our fossil fuel baseload power supply with this nuclear, and along with the your other renewable power source. So if you say like you really want to have an ideal energy mix, it is really important to have a base load as a nuclear. And then you can build upon like other sources to include depending on your demography, your geography, and everything. So this is the main idea of energy mix, if I'm clear about it. So of course, Win India is when we say Win India, it's one of the objective is to tell people about the benefits and other benefits of nuclear technology. This is one of them. It is really important that we should tell people that it is not only the technologies in nuclear technology in medical, agriculture, and it is also there in the field of climate change. And along with that, when we talk about energy mix, we these days there's another concept which we call as like energy. I forgot the complete name. It's the energy hybrid plants, basically. So when we talk about energy hybrid plant, we want to have all sort of different energy sources in one place so that we can utilize all the benefits out of them. And nuclear has one added thing. If you talk about like new plants, that desalination of seawater to make it drinkable is one of the very like I must say a new aspect which everyone is considering too, especially in the countries like in Middle East and all, where there is a scarcity of drinking water. They are utilizing that part as well. And India also do the same thing with our power plants to use that thing, because in India as well the drinking water is a big issue. So considering all these aspects, the combination or the energy mix which having a larger stake of nuclear power plant as the baseload power supply is a must. So Win India definitely uh, follow it, and we will definitely promote it to our audience, and we'll try them to understand like they should logically take it that why it is important. So this is my take on this thing, and I think the entire organization follow the same. Thank you.
Yes, Uma ma'am would like to add.
I was just trying to say that there are interesting hybrid concepts, like you can have a solar powered plant placed along with nuclear plants. The solar power would cater to the 8 hours in the morning when there is sun, and you could have in the night you have a nuclear reactor which is based on some molten salt reactor or something which heats up the fuel and the coolant in the daytime, and thereby you could have these hybrid concepts which are very, very encouraging and very interesting concepts to work on for future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for adding this interesting point. Actually, this reminds me of my own master thesis project, which was, I think, related to which I coincidentally I did in BARC only, where I think nuclear power. Along with that, there was a relation. They were using like I think CSP plant. So solar was being attached to actually the nuclear thing. So that was the project I did in my master thesis. So absolutely, there has to be like the share has to be there. And thank you, Dr. Nitendra, for putting light on this very important matter on the energy mix. So with that, actually, I would like to ask Dr. Manpreet Sethi, ma'am, uh, that that this nuclear for climate, like I think this is a very I think this is kind of like a global campaign kind of thing that is there, like it's going on in many countries that nuclear should be is a part of the solution for climate change. So with that, if like a lot of activities are being done across the globe. So I would like to ask, like, if there are any future plans for Win India, and how, like, they plan to collaborate in future with, national organizations, like we have several national organizations, nuclear based, like INS is there, then Indian Youth Nuclear Society is there, then Indian Young Climate Forum is there. So such kind of organization, and as well as international organizations like IYNC or IAEA. So such, what are the strategies for the organization to collaborate for any future activities in general?
Thanks, Sunana. I think as Win India, the understanding is very clear that we want to do dissemination of correct information in a credible format, and therefore linking up with like-minded organizations which also, have similar missions and visions would be the way to go. Because if you have to do an outreach, it's better to go through an organization which is already established, has its own membership, and it will give us a better forum to do our own outreach. So definitely we will be reaching out to all these organizations. And to just weigh in very briefly on the previous question, I think what also India needs to, and Dr. Nitendra pointed it out, that as part of the energy basket, there is room for every source in India because of our electricity requirement being what it is. It's not renewable versus nuclear. You need renewable and you need nuclear as well, because each one is fitting into a different requirement of the kind of electricity sources that we have. And each one has its own pros and cons. So we need to understand that where are we building these power plants, that goes into deciding whether it should be a nuclear or it should be a renewable. But also, while hybrid plants have been referred to, which is essentially to say that wind and solar are intermittent sources of electricity and you don't have them available all the time, whereas you need base load. But another thing which is not understood enough is that with renewables, the choice that you have to make is also about land requirement. For instance, what you see, recently the Prime Minister inaugurated the largest solar park in India, which is in Rewa, which is spread over 1,400 hectares of land. Compared to that, the Kakrapar power station is only about 1,000 hectares, out of which 500 hectares is a green belt. So there are these, costs and benefit calculations that you need to make when you make your energy choices. And I think India is in a happy position to have all of them with us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the addition and also about the planned activities that the organization has in terms of collaboration. So moving on, my next question is for Mrs. Archana Yadav. Ma'am, right after the launch, we kind of got questions from people asking about what are the different activities that Win India is planning in future to further the cause and to spread the awareness. So could you please tell us about some of the perceived activities that you may have planned in the coming future, near future, I would say.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. I think we've just begun, and there's nothing that we cannot do. So the entire forum is available to us because we have the stage is already set. We know what has to be done, and I think the previous speakers have done their part in elaborating the main areas that we need to address to. And I think we have all available options to spread this information. We can employ all innovative, creative ideas to just proliferate this information that we have, of course, in the right and the correct manner that Dr. Manpreet Sethi just mentioned. So we can plan, we can use this social media, which can be a very powerful tool these days. People have this habit of just looking at a YouTube video and then spreading it across to their friends and family when they find it interesting. So this can be done. That can be one of the modes where we can have an awareness campaign through social media. We can write posts. We can have an experience sharing blogs that can be created by the members, both board members and the executive committee members, which will follow. And we can have some expert talks. People who have actually had been part of great missions, missions of national importance, they can come on stage, especially women, because they fail to get themselves on such platforms and get the right attention. So that can be one of the more, and of course, we are not debarring male candidates from doing so. They are equally important to us. We would also like to have some experience sharing which is done by young scholars and students, so that they can portray what their experience was in the industry while they were working during their projects or during their early careers. So this will be a mode of dissemination of information that we can follow, so that the information reaches the masses in the minimum possible time. I think this is just the beginning. So we can employ many more ways of doing it, and we are not restricted to anything. Thank you.
Right, ma'am. Thank you for elaborating on the perceived activities. And with that, actually, I would like to ask Uma, ma'am, that like that all like we all have been discussing like various objectives and like goals that organization pursue like aims to achieve. But do you like as you like work towards, you all work in that direction, so do you perceive any like what kind of challenges do you perceive as with the in terms of achieving the objective?
Thank you, Sunaina. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay. Of course, the challenges for us are manifold. The right perspective about atoms for energy and for societal applications has to reach far and wide across the country. So the first challenge would be to license with the government agencies, and then to sustain the funding. That's another important aspect. Of course, we have a good mix of experienced and young and enthusiastic people in our board of directors. So there should be a role which is being assigned to each and every activity. And with this type of functioning, I feel we could go to many places or many people. As I already said, that we have to go to schools, arrange workshops. So these kind of networking is another important aspect for our organization. Of course, with this IT and which is kind of network which is available now, I think it should be easy for us to do this. And with this, there are many challenges, of course. So these are the things we would try to attack one by one in the board. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for answering this question. And in fact, yes, like you were talking right now about arranging workshops, and also what Mrs. Archana said about, having more and more interactive sessions. Given the present scenario, I think, yeah, taking the use of online platforms and trying to disseminate the information is the best way for now to go, I'm sure. Okay, so I now move to my final question for Dr. Mary Mohan Kumar, but I ask, I invite all of you to, add on to this, because of where you are in your career. I'm sure everybody has something to add to this. So, Dr. Mary, do you have any advice for the young professionals who, would, in years to come, who would want to join the nuclear industry?
After hearing all that was going on today, I must say, I was surprised that there is a lot of young women in particular interested in the nuclear industry. Okay, things have changed. Frankly speaking, I was surprised at the way they have come forward. But also during my time, also I have seen equal enthusiasm. Whoever joined the department showed equal enthusiasm. Sometimes we were doing things better than the men, frankly speaking. Well, I have handled radioactive sources as a woman. Also, when I was pregnant too. But of course, the sources, being in the health physics, we know how much we are exposed to. As to all the safety precautions, measurement of doses, the dosimetry, everything used to be taken care of. So there was never a time when they were once they join, they know what it is, and they put their heart and soul into it. So I am absolutely certain that all that we need to do is to motivate them And the youngsters never ask all these questions, because all these, one is ignorance that comes regarding myth. The other is the people who are behind them, coming with lot of, it is a big organization. The anti-nuclear lobby is a big organization, and it is centered somewhere international. So whatever you tell them, because many times the doctors around, they will come and ask me questions. I have done a big epidemiological survey around that reactor. Okay, I was in charge of that program. It was a 1.3 crore project. Of course, it was done by a third party because we are not supposed to do that. And when I did, I went each and every village. We were a team, in fact, of doctors also with me. And we had to tell them, what we did is that we took blood samples, urine samples, did the test and gave back to them. And not with the just idea of getting information or doing, but we just wanted to tell them, unless you do the study, you cannot come out with a result and tell them this is the state of affairs. So people used to ask certain things, some, genetic things. Oh, my child is born with the 6 fingers and 7 fingers. It's all because we are living there. It is not so. That is totally that genetic thing is a different aspect. But then it takes a long time to try to make them understand. So education is the only way. So the youngsters never come out with this question. Once you talk to them, they always think positively. So motivating the young people is something you can simply do, and you will have 100% success. Once they are inducted, they have a desire to learn, to understand, to implement, and work hard. Okay. So that I'm 100% sure that we will have no problem motivating youngsters at all. So going to school, we used to do that also. Going to school, they should come out with very, very nice questions. And so once you tell them that these are the opportunities, then we have to tell them where okay, after you complete your thing, you come, there's a BRC training school, IGCAR, there are very many other health physics related DRP conducts. So you can give your share in not only the energy sector and the application of nuclear energy. And so we have always had positive outlook from the young generation. So there is absolutely no difficulty in talking to them and bring them into the thing. So all that we need is we have to go and meet them, talk to them. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. There is Dr. Nitin Singh who would like to add something. Sir, please.
After that, I think Manju ma'am will be coming next to you after Dr. Nitin.
Thank you. I think most of the things has very well said. Just one thing I want to say. It's not an advice because I don't feel I am of that level that I could advise anything, but would like to share the experience that what I have found, the youngsters, they just believe what they see or they hear around and things like that. My point is that they should decide or they should consider everything with their own judgment. Instead of just saying, okay, solar is good, I would say learn about it, see why it is good. When they see nuclear, okay, nuclear is bad, you just see why it is bad. So instead of just saying solar is good, nuclear is bad, it's not the logical thinking. You should understand why nuclear is good as well, and maybe in many folds. And if we say solar is bad, then why it is bad as well. So this is the main thing they should think in any aspect of their life, in career, in anything, that logically what is correct and why. So answering themselves by learning around, it's very important to this. And one thing which already everyone has addressed, I think Manju ma'am and Manpreet ma'am has very well said, that it's not like men versus women. It's basically about women. So I think as a male counterpart, it's our responsibility that we work towards the encouragement and the acknowledgement which our women need. And as of my understanding, I feel like I would be willing and would be ready to do whatever I can and I could in terms of facilitating this organization as a whole. So this is the main thing I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nitendra, for sharing this advice, not just for like a generic advice for all the spheres of life with for the youngsters. And another good thing to hear from Mary ma'am is that, like, it's we have already one thing, that students are motivated. We just have to reach them and give them the direction to pursue this field. So thank you to both of you for adding this. And next, I would request Manju ma'am to uh, add her point.
Yeah, it's regarding. I think Dr. Mary has already touched upon that point, that you have to catch them young. You have to educate them so that they can make the right choice. At the same time, what I have also found is, I just adding on to that, is that counseling sessions. Ultimately, I mean, let's face the fact that all the youngsters, when they graduate, they are going to look at the opportunities for the job opportunities, growth opportunities, depending on their circumstances, right? And for that matter, it's important that you can see the scene in the colleges or in the premier institutes and all, who are there in the campus interviews or who are there in the counseling sessions. You have to educate the teachers who are in the counseling sessions, or the counselors also. I think we need, as WIN India, to promote nuclear, we should be targeting also the counseling sessions and also those industries that, please, you should participate in these campaigns which happen, campus recruitment, which is mostly IT, finance, and Facebook and Google, and these are the companies. Where would that child go? He has no clue about it. Even if you teach him nuclear energy, but if there's nobody present over there to hire him, to give him any job opportunity, where will they go? So, like we do it at BRC, definitely we give advertisement and everything, but those who are in dire need, they will read the advertisement. But these people, right, go on their, they go at the doorstep. So that's important, that you reach them out rather than them reaching you out and trying to find you out. So let's hope that we try to incorporate something like that, and hopefully we encourage more youngsters in that way to, target and to be a part of this family. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
We also have Dr. Jyoti Gupta, who wants to add something, followed by Dr. Uma Shankari. So, Jyoti ma'am, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. It's a message for young professionals who are about to join nuclear, that if you come across someone who questions your judgment or judges your decision of joining nuclear, don't get disheartened. In fact, take it as an opportunity to teach yourself and teach that person. Maybe you can turn that person around, and you can have a friend in nuclear sector. So that's the message. Don't get disheartened. Continue your path.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I would like to add something to what Manju had said. Nowadays, we are going to the colleges and universities to popularize the courses which is offered in training schools. So as practicing professionals, we ourselves are going for this outreach program. That is one thing good which has happened over the years. And as an advice to the young professionals, I would say that you all have to be an ambassadors of the peaceful uses of atomic energy. So we have to have a role in convincing the youngsters that they have to become the ambassadors, and they will convince the rest. And it's a chain reaction which has to go on. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. This brings us to the end of today's interview. I would like to thank all of you once again for taking out the time and to answering all our questions. And there were surely many questions. So Thank you so much, and I'm sure all of us have a clearer, clearer image of what this organization stands for, and what are the goals and everything that is related to this organization. We would also like to thank our viewers for tuning into our channel and watching this session. We really hope that you enjoyed it. And good evening to everyone again. Take care, stay safe, and have a nice Sunday, whatever is left of it.